So the SoFlo Nationals just got done this weekend. Congratulations to everybody and all of your achievements down there. And it's got me itching a little bit to get this drag car out, but we need to get the drag car put back together. And we are going to start that here today. We are going to work and get our lay down gear differential all built up so that way we are ready to go and get this beautiful transmission started on the R1 DC1, and we can get ready to start doing some partying here in a couple months when things warm up. It's a crappy day outside, so it's a beautiful day to do some wrenching. I'm Chad, this is the Dorky 40 RC channel. We are going to make you faster today. So building your gear differential is one of those things that obviously is not difficult. There's great instruction manuals on how to do that. We'll show you through a couple of those as well. Main thing is just having all of the parts that you need and taking some basic steps for success. One thing is, especially when you get into like doing your gear diff servicing, is you never want to short yourself. So you always want to change out things like your bearings, for example, that are here. You want to make sure that they're always nice and clean. You want to make sure that things are shimmed up properly, which we will be doing. O-rings, all the different things like that. Your seal, planetaries and stuff. Possibly you could get away with reusing some of this stuff that you'll have in a kit, but you're going to have to clean them up and do all that kind of stuff. And, you know, we want to try to keep this as simple and as clean as possible. So if it's in your budget to like start with new parts and maybe keep your old diff to the side if you ever need it, then that's definitely the best way to go. Now, of course, I'm building a new one here because I'm moving from the stand-up transmission in the DC1 to the lay-down configuration. A lot of changes going on. Still going to be the same principles though. Everything has been cleaned completely. Brake cleaner, any kind of solvent like that that you want to make sure that you've got all the residue off of like your screws, your gears, all that kind of stuff. Dried out, everything starts completely clean. Now, the other thing that you're going to have to consider is what kind of diff fluid you're going to run. A lot of people will run something lighter, 200K here. Take a look at that. I actually like to put 500K in my diff. It seems like anything over that is just a little bit more hard to work with, and a lot of people will say you don't get much of advantage. And anything lighter like a 200K would work all right, but the problem is that your diff, the oil, is going to break down a lot faster, and you're going to have to end up servicing your diff a little bit more. Also, in the summertime, as things heat up, this will get lighter. This will get lighter, so you're going to kind of be in a better zone starting with something like around 500K. I like this, stuff in a tube here. I believe this is TLR because it's a lot easier to squirt out and get in there. What you're going to see is kind of part of the process of building one of these. Gets a little messy real quick, so you could always wear gloves if you want to, whatever. The other thing that I highly recommend is for any of your build is this Permatex gel. Now, this is my favorite type of thread locker. It's a gel that you can just basically, put like literally right here on your pit mat and just take a dab of what you need. It doesn't run everywhere or get everywhere. I would probably say after, it dries, it becomes more of a consistency of between a Loctite red and a purple. So it holds better than a blue. I just like it. I trust it. If you like to get some of that, there is an Amazon link down below in the description, as well as you can buy me a coffee or a beer with the paypal.me link. So let's get to this mess here. So the first thing we're going to do, we can take a look at all the parts that we've shown you, get everything out of the way that we aren't going to need. What I have here is some high wear grease. This came with like an associated kit, buggy kit, whatever. You can pick some of this up at your hobby store, or you can use any kind of grease that you like, quite honestly. And we've got all R1 parts here. Basically because they all need to just fit perfectly and work together inside of here. So a lot of this stuff would work in other kind of differentials as well. If you ever are in a pinch and you need to get stuff from DRC, the associated stuff, a lot of this stuff will work inside of here. Like, again, if you ever are in a pinch, but when you can, always stick with the people who make your product, so that way if you have a problem, you're talking apples to apples and you're not going to have to worry about like not having support. So if we take a look at the actual manual here for the DC1, the first thing it's telling us to do is to go ahead and assemble our L drive into 1/2 of the gear diff. If you look at the B6.4 manual here, I've always done this. It does say to use some of their high wear black grease on the end of your out drives. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. So we're going to just take a little bit of that, not a lot. And we're just going to rub that and coat that on the out drives. And then always have some paper towels or something next to you, so that way you can get rid of all your excess. I'm just going to, of course, use my build mat and be a total heathen here. So we got that done. And then we're going to take one of these larger O-rings here, and we're just going to slide that right over one of the out drives. We're going to take our half here, the big half where all the fluid's going to go, and that's going to set right in there really nicely. And then, of course, we're going to take one of these larger washers and put that inside there. And you might need some tweezers. Things like that would help out. All right, we've got that down inside there. It's going to make our life a lot easier. Now what we need to do is take one of these out drive pins here, and if you look inside of your gear diff, there's actually lips there, but there's no lip right here. So we'll actually be able to slide that down in there, and then you're going to rotate the actual out drive so you can get that pin through the hole like so. And then it's all going to be held in place inside there. Real simple, real easy. All right, now that is step one complete. And the next thing I want to do is I want to start putting in a little bit of fluid. Just makes things easier, help things settle down, pack stuff in. You can go ahead and try to work on this and do it and fill it all at the same time. But I just always find it easier to go this route. Plus, it's going to just kind of hold everything in place too. So again, this is 500K. So this stuff is super thick and super difficult to work with. So I'm just going to keep pouring and just kind of turning the diff a little bit. And then once I get a decent amount in there, we'll start spinning it around a little bit and just kind of making sure that everything is in there. And, this is just to make sure that we've got fluid where we need it. And you can see that this stuff is just like sticking everywhere and not getting hardly anywhere. So again, super thick, probably going to take a lot more than you think. All right, so we got a fair amount inside there. You just kind of want to make sure that like the entire bottom is covered, and you've got, pretty good amount inside there just to make your life a lot easier. Then what we can do is we can actually start assembling the actual cross members and the planetary. So this is where things can get a little bit tricky. The instructions and everything are going to give you enough for 4 gears inside there. And some people like to only run just one set. There's different advantages. I'm not 100% sure. I would guess less rotating mass inside there, things like that. Kind of the reason for the titanium screws that we have here. But I'm going to go with the old school style, so that way when we get things going out on the road, we know for sure that the diff is not causing problems if we have any. So those are pretty easy to build and set up. If you look at the instruction manual here, what you're going to do is just take one of your cross members, and then of course you're going to take your smaller planetary gears and pop one of those on each end. And then you're going to have one of the little O-rings that your kit came with, and you're going to stick those on there. Some people run these, some people don't. And then if you're going to have a washer on the end. And you want to make sure that when you build these little packages like this, that you're super careful that you don't lose anything, because this stuff really likes to go flopping around on you real quick. So I'm going to take one of our O-rings, get that, slide that down through there, and then another one of our washers, and then kind of compress that down into the gear. And then we've got our entire gear setup here, and then we're going to separate it a little bit and make sure things do not go flying off the end. As long as you got everything together somewhat here, you can kind of fix this when you get it and stick it inside of the actual gear diff, which is what we're going to do. But before we do that, we need to take one of these bottom gears of the planetary, stick that down in there. It's the reason why we wanted to have all of that nice diff fluid to start with. And going to need to just kind of spin it around, and you'll feel it click into place on the rotating pin inside there. And if you ever get to a point where nothing is just working out, it's probably because you are not seated properly and you're not connected. This bottom side here, as you can see, isn't fitting inside of one of those pins like that. So now that we got that in there, we could probably go ahead, dump a little bit more fluid. This is probably the slowest part of the process, getting this stuff out of here. Now, the important thing with this fluid is don't go crazy, because we're actually only going to fill this thing up to the top of our cross members here. So we'll go ahead and slide this all inside here. And then we can use our tweezers to kind of help rotate everything into place. So we need the little notch to be sticking up for us. And we can probably, just rotate it a little bit like that. And just kind of eyeball this thing and make sure that everything is settling in there properly. And it looks good. So again, we're going to come back with the diff fluid, and you should already start to feel a little bit of resistance in here. This stuff is very, very thick for sure. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start assembling the other internal cross member with the other planetary gears on it, and we will drop that inside and mate it up with the opposite channel on the cross members. And then that is all going to pack and just sit in there all nicely. Make sure nothing is protruding. And you can see we want to put a little bit more diff fluid in there. We definitely want it coming up to at least, halfway, if not a little bit over. And that's why I always kind of put way more in at the beginning than right here, because now we're going to be stuck in this position where we're trying to fill this thing up kind of blindly, and we got to turn it and all that kind of stuff, and kind of gets a little more messy, but it's doable. All right, so we are to the point where I think I am pretty happy with the way that is all in there. And just want to make sure we push down on everything. Again, the diff fluid is just coming just to the top of that actual cross section there. You don't really need to go any higher than that at all. And if we take a look here at the instructions, we've kind of bypassed a lot of different parts on this. So you can see we're looking here, we've already done this, and now we are on to this step here, which is pretty much the same thing. So we're just going to take our outer diff pole here, diff cover, and we're going to take a little bit of that anti-wear grease, and we're going to put that on the here, nice and smooth and not super thick. Wipe off the excess, and grab ourselves an O-ring. And then we're going to go ahead and put that on there, pop that through, and then we will have a washer that goes on top of there. And then there should be another outdrive pin right here. And this top one is pretty much the same. We can see that we don't have a lip on this side. So we'll grab our tweezers, and this should stick very well. Should have some diff fluid on it. And we'll spin it around here so we can actually see the hole. And then we will just slide her in just like that. Get it over about halfway, and then take our last planetary gear and get that seated on there like so. Now, the last thing that we have, of course, is our actual diff screws, and we have our seal. Now, might be controversial to some people, but I've had a lot of diffs back out on me. These R1 threads are very, very good. So I actually haven't had a problem with these. I like these. You can actually torque down on them pretty good. But what we're going to do is we're just going to put just a little bit of the thread locker on there and not drop our diff screw in there. I'm going to have to clean that one now. And a little of the thread locker goes a long way. We don't want these things like completely seized up, but you do want to make sure that, you know, it's not coming out on you either while you're driving down the road. That's not a good thing. So we're going to go ahead and leave one of those queued up here on the screwdriver. We are going to take our seal, and now there's a decent amount of fluid on here that should make this seal stick very well to where it needs to be. You can see that. Just press down on that baby, and it is stuck in place. And then this is actually keyed, so it'll go into any part where there is an opening. Doesn't really matter. And everything is seated really, really good. That worked out great. So then we're going to start with one diff screw, and we're just going to kind of get it started to where we start feeling some resistance. We're going to want to actually tighten these babies up and across. So these are the titanium differential screws that R1 has. Again, a little less rotating mass. They're purple. We'll never see them except for when the diff is actually out, but that's purple, right? It's cool to know they're in there. So we'll get this last one in here. So now we can go through and we can start cranking these babies down in a cross pattern. Again, make sure that you don't over tighten, but do not leave these loose at all. So real tight. Don't need to let them just go super cranking down, because again, you are going to have to take these out. So that's why we use a small amount of a good thread locker that we know is in there. That's why I like that Permatex blue gel so much. And that is it. We have a diff, and that is exactly how we want it to feel. There should be no popping, no grinding. Everything should just feel very smooth, but also there should just be a ton of resistance on there as well. And I think that really turned out good. Now, the last part that we'll be doing before we put this in the transmission is we will have to shim it. And basically that just means that we will have some shims that are going to go underneath these bearings here, because when you get those in and then you put it into the transmission, and we'll just stick it in there just to show you guys. it's just not going to seat in the middle perfectly. Like, it's going to be off by, you know, 1/1000th of a millimeter type of deal. You know, those videos where people take their stuff and just spin them like crazy. So, you know, you can see how, you know, much I could spin that thing right there. But, you know, you could probably hear it. So there is a little bit of side to side play on that, and we don't want to like completely lock that down, but we want to try to eliminate a little bit of that as much as we can, and that's where the shimming and all that stuff's going to come in, and we'll get into that in the next build when we actually put this thing together. We've got the idler gear, top shaft, all that good stuff, and we'll get that knocked out. It'll be super duper sweet. So we've got a good start. That's always one of the big things to do right there. That's something, again, that if you're new to No Prep Drag RC or any kind of RC, that's something that rebuilding diffs is something that you're going to have to do. As you can see here on the bench, it's definitely a lot nicer to do than at a dirty, sticky pit table in the middle of a 95-degree day when you're sweaty and everything else, but that's racing, boys. So we will talk to you guys later. Love you all. Peace.